Welcome, everybody. I'm really pleased to introduce to you today City Council member Jacob Kupin with District 19. And as many of you already know and probably have heard, there's going to be a resolution presented before Council this coming Tuesday, June 18th. Jacob is one of the people who worked in collaboration with Councilmember Zulfat Swara to write the resolution. And it's dealing with relationships between Israel and Gaza and the situation that's been unfolding there for the last 8 or 9 months now. So Jacob, welcome. Glad to have you and pleased to be able to have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me and making time for this.
Yeah, so I guess the first question that I have, and we have sent out a link to the resolution, so most people hopefully have read through it. But tell me a little bit about it and how you came to be involved with crafting some of the language around it.
Yeah, no, so I think the first important point is that this is Councilman Suarez' effort. She drafted it, she wrote it with the State Open Meetings Act. We're not allowed to collaborate outside of publicly noticed meetings, so I was sent a copy of it. I did act as kind of as much as I could a check and balance to it, and was able to give some suggestions back to the council office that they were able to, I think, share with her, but that we're really limited in how we can collaborate. So I think it's important for people to know that this is not a co-resolution so much as it is Councilman Suarez' effort that I have signed on to and tried to balance. And I like to people how this came to be. As we know, for the last 8 months, we've had obviously one of the worst terrorist attacks, one of the worst attacks on the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and my heart has hurt since then. I've lost sleep over this. It's been really awful. I've met hostage families, and as someone who's been engaged in the Jewish community for so many years, this has been really tough to watch, as I know it has been for so many other people. And I think it's also important to know for people that my lens is always what's best for the Jewish community here. And I what I saw is that Councilman Swara had been trying to do something or wanting to do something and hadn't. She'd held back. And we were able to get past the Jewish Heritage Resolution, and we were able to get past the resolution condemning the Nazi march. And we kept doing things for the Jewish community, and that's wonderful. And that's part of why I ran for council, was to put forward efforts like that. But I saw the pain in her eyes, and I saw the hurt in her eyes, and I saw the hurt in her community's eyes that they weren't hearing from their council. And at the last council meeting, she had said, is there anything we can do? Is there anything you can get behind? And I said, look, if it says genocide, if it says ethnic cleansing, I can't support that. I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think that's what's going on. Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to feel safe and be okay. But if you can get something that is fact-based and balanced and recognizes how this started and where we are, and doesn't ask for a ceasefire and doesn't try to tell an international entity what to do, but is fact-based and focused on Nashville, I might be able to get behind that, or at least not stand in the way of that, as I honestly have been for the last 8 months trying to push back on a resolution like this.
Right.
And so, and I don't remember the day exactly, but a number of days ago, I received from the council office a draft. And again, technically, I'm not allowed to do any sort of edits or feedback or things like that. I was able to kind of loosely suggest some things that I do think ended up making it into the final document. But I felt that this was the best we were going to get if we were going to do something. And again, I think that there's been tension. There's been tension amongst council members. There's been people that have been coming to speak every meeting at public comment. And I think that's harming the Jewish community's perception here. And I think it was harming our relationship with the Muslim community and people that were calling for this document. And so my hope is that, again, that it's not, people are, of course, going to read the words and hear the words, and really try to make sure those words were as balanced and as factual as possible. But to me, the important piece is the message that in this document, we talk about the increase of anti-Semitic incidents, the increase of Islamophobic incidents. We are two communities that need to stand together and fight the hate that's out there and fight the anti-Semitism that's out there. And so to me, I felt that if there was a way that I could stand with my colleague and, as a Jewish council member and Jewish representative, stand with the Muslim representative and stand together and show some unity. It's not perfect. It's not going to hit the words right. I know there are going to be people that are very upset that we're doing this. I don't love it. I wish we didn't have to do this. But I think that there is something to be said for, again, an Islamic leader and a Jewish leader standing together, trying to find the common ground. And I hope that people don't just read the words, but they recognize the intention, they recognize the heart behind this. And they recognize that, again, the goal is not to rip people apart, but is to get through this moment and to say, okay, we've done what we can here. Let's start to heal. Let's start to bridge our communities, because I think what's coming down the road is really, really scary, and is something that we have to address.
Well, so you make some good points, and I appreciate your honesty on this issue, but and I appreciate also your explaining the process that goes through the council. So that's great. But when you talk about things like it's not perfect and all that kind of stuff, so you're not the only person on the council with ties to the Jewish community. There's at least one other council member, Sherry Weiner, who is Jewish, and several others who are part of our community as well. And yet you're the only person who was asked to weigh in, and others were not brought into that process as well. People who might have different experiences or viewpoints, or different ideas about what might feel right for the Jewish community. So I'm kind of asking you to explain that and why it wasn't even more open.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think that was a call that Councilman Suara made, that again, I'm not trying to put off any agency. Of course, I make my decisions, but really was something that was her choice as to who she would include. Again, that has to be sent from the council office to other colleagues. And what Councilman Suara had said to the office is that she wanted to write something from her heart and not include other groups, right? My heart is always with the Jewish Federation. I'm a board member, right? In prior instances, prior things that we've been working on have included the Federation in discussions and deliberation. But the request I got was very specific, and that was, what are your thoughts? And please don't share this. And I think her intention behind that was that she recognized that if she shared that with AMAC and some of these the Muslim groups and groups that are calling for this a real ceasefire resolution, they were going to want words like genocide. They were going to want things in there that were completely non-starters. And so I think that her goal was and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that her thought process was, by doing it with a smaller group, we had a better shot to get balanced language together. And once we started including other groups, it might have fallen apart. And some might say, well, that's why we shouldn't do it. And that may be true, right? That there's a really valid sentiment to say, hey, if it's so far apart, we shouldn't do it. And again, I think, this is scary for me. This is uncomfortable for me. This is my community. The Jewish people are my people. I've been part of this community for years. It's scary to do this, and especially on my own. But my calculation, my thought process again is that the idea of a Muslim leader and a Jewish leader trying to come together on something was really powerful, and not something I wanted to. It was something I wanted to put forward. Again, to me, I really respect the other Jewish council members. Councilman Weiner and Cap and Brenda Gadd and Clay and Quinn Evans Siegel and so many others. And I think in another world, everybody would have been brought in. And again, I think Councilman Suara's idea was that if she writes it and she just kind of checks and balances it and goes, it might be easier. And again, there's pros and cons to that process.
Sure. Well, we all know if you ask one Jew a question, you're going to get 12 opinions anyway. So I understand and appreciate all that. Obviously, there are those in our community who are concerned, as you mentioned, you're a board member of the Jewish Federation, and feel like this may be in conflict with that your two roles as a member of the council and a member of the board may be in conflict with each other. So I guess, that's sort of something that needs to be thought through. One question I did have that has come up among other folks in the community, and that's kind of this whole notion of these non-binding resolutions in general. We're a civic, relatively small city government. What's the value in writing these resolutions? Why are they important? And is the council time better spent on sort of the nuts and bolts of running the city? Why are these resolutions, why is that a tool? Because there's a lot of people who don't feel it's an effective tool or an effective use of council time.
That's a great question. And just real quick to touch on the board thing, I think that's a fair conversation, an important conversation I intend to have in the coming weeks. I think that we can all understand that when I ran for city council and stayed on the board of the Federation, I did not expect, Israel relations to be a top topic. So didn't really see much of the conflict. And so I think it's an important conversation, but I'd also say that I think it's provided benefit in the sense of, again, having the Jewish Heritage Resolution for the first time, and having the neo-Nazi late file resolution condemning them. So, but if there is a conflict, that is something I want to make sure that there isn't, and something I intend to explore further. As far as the benefit of non-binding resolutions, again, I think that it's important to make clear that this is not something that I, as a representative of the Jewish community, would seek out. Right? I wouldn't go and say, God, we should do this. I want to do this. But when it is brought up and it is asked for by a large number of the members of the public that we serve, and it has been, right? This has not been just one small group. There's another petition coming before us next week with hundreds of signatures asking for something like this. We've gotten multiple petitions. We've had members of the public say, we really want this. And again, I think that there are certain parts of it that are just complete non-starters that we can't support. But I also, again, in my heart, can't ignore that. I can't ignore those voices. And again, if it were reversed, if the Jewish community were begging for something and saying, Jacob, please do this, and I kept saying, no, we can't, I wouldn't want to put my community in that position, and I wouldn't want to put someone else's community in that position. So again, if there's a way to do it in a way that is as balanced as possible, I think that it takes some of the pressure off the relationship between the two communities, because there has been discussions of, I think people kind of knew the tensions that was there, and so pushing through that. And again, it's not comfortable. Doesn't feel good. This is not a yay, we're doing this, as much as it is. I think it's an important thing to do, and it's an important thing to get past and through. And I think that's going to open up a space for healing. As far as asking about the, council time and council energy on this, I think there's a couple pieces. Last term, to my understanding, there was a resolution supporting the people of Ukraine and talking about the violence over there. So there is historic precedent for doing resolutions for international conflicts. That being said, I think that if this were an international event only, I probably wouldn't have wanted to touch it. But I've watched my local community hurt. I've watched people hurt. I've talked to friends that are Israeli who have had friends block them on Facebook and say things in classrooms. And to me, if there's anything that I can do to lessen that conflict and lessen that pain and find ways to build bridges, I want to do that, because I think at the end of the day, it's the best for our community. And so to me, again, I recognize that there's people that are not happy about this and people that think we shouldn't even touch it. I don't think that there was I don't think that not touching it was going to happen. I think it was going to come up eventually one way or another. And I also think that it's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to recognize another community that's hurting. And again, try to do it in a way that's balanced, but try to extend an olive branch and work together, because I think that the issues we have locally are so drastic. And my hope and my dream is that we find a way as a Muslim community, as a Jewish community, to push through this and come together and again, fight anti-Semitism, fight Islamophobia, and unite against the hate that's out there in this world.
Right. Well, and along those lines, there are some folks I've spoken with in the community who are maybe hoping that this resolution will be deferred for further discussion and maybe wordsmithing or wait, to give it a little more airtime before it gets passed through. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is Tuesday got to be the night, or is there a possibility that maybe it needs a second look, or maybe it needs now that it's out there that there are more voices who might want to weigh in the interest of maybe better balance?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I know Councilman Weiner, actually, we used something called Council Connect that we have, where we can actually discuss with each other in a public forum. And she did post a very poignant note that I appreciate, and I very much respect and value her opinion, and want to give her that airtime, right? And so, again, there's a lot of time between now and Tuesday to see what happens. But as of now, I would be supportive of a deferral conversation to allow people to weigh in. Again, I think the concern that Councilman Suara had may come to fruition, which is that once different groups start to share their thoughts, maybe there isn't a common place. But again, to me, and to your point earlier on non-binding resolutions, that the document itself is not what I'm getting at. It's the conversations. If this allows for a space for the Jewish community and the Muslim community to start having these conversations and figuring out where are we apart and where are we the same, maybe there is a positive impact on the other side of this. So I think that if the wish of the community is, hey, we know it's here, we don't love it, we hate that we're doing this, but if it's here, let's talk about it some more. I think I'd be supportive of that, of making that space and time. Again, I would love to get everybody on the same page. I know that sounded maybe pie in the sky and naive, but I think that there's been an elephant in the room with our communities. And if we can use this as a way to get past that, I think we will all be better off for that.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I've been speaking with Metro Council member Jacob Kupin of District 19. If anybody has any further questions or wants to take a look at the resolution, you can visit nashville.gov/council, if I'm not mistaken. And in the meantime, Jacob, thank you so much for taking some time with us today and explaining a little bit more so we can all be better informed.
Of course, and if anyone has any questions, please reach out to me. My door is open. I'm happy to talk further.
Thank you.